Field Yates covers the NFL, ESPN, and we will chat a little bit more. NFL reporter for ESPN, Field Yates, joins me now on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN with a look at 17 days, Field. The draft is finally here. I know you guys probably going hoping for that Thursday night to get here sooner than later, but what are some things between now and then that you think could materialize or change, or do you think teams are pretty much locking their picks in, or do you think this is a very fluid top half of the draft?
Yeah, no, I think every draft is going to be fluid up until the final hours before the draft. I think that the most important thing that's going to take place between now and 2.5 weeks from right now when the draft kicks off is that a couple of players, and the list of notable ones starts with Jalen Smith of Notre Dame, are going to head back to Indianapolis for a combine medical recheck, which basically is another chance to go through a battery of tests, and in some cases it will provide updates. In some cases it will provide perhaps just further confirmation of previous issues. In some cases it may show that there are still lingering issues. So that's an important an example of something that has some importance over the next 2.5 weeks. And then beyond that, there will be the customary pre-draft visits for a variety of prospects and, those that take place on NFL campuses with teams and could impact the way that teams stack up their board just a little bit.
Yeah, Field, I'm glad you brought that up because over the last week or so, we've heard the Eagles working out guys like Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Paxton Lynch, Christian Hackenberg. Correct me if I'm wrong, they spent about $70 million on quarterbacks this offseason. So are these quarterbacks worthy of bringing on board when you've already committed to 2 veteran quarterbacks on your roster?
Yeah, it's really an interesting proposition because the Eagles paid a ton of money early on in free agency to retain Sam Bradford and then sign Chase Daniel. You think to yourself, that's enough off-season activity for at least one franchise. That doesn't even include the trade of Mark Sanchez to Denver. But then when you look closer at the specs of the contracts for Sam Bradford and Chase Daniel, it's clear that if the Eagles did not feel that these were the 2 right quarterbacks or that either one of them was the right quarterback for them going forward, they can escape from these contracts after the 2016 season without massive financial penalty, which is something that presents upside to the franchise. I mean, obviously you don't want to be locked into a quarterback long-term if he isn't the answer for your franchise. So the Eagles, while they're doing their homework for the potential of using the 8th overall pick in the draft on a Jared Goff or Carson Wentz, et cetera, I also think that, it's possible they're doing this as a just-in-case method. Nothing more than that. I think that we try hard to read into the various parts that go into the pre-draft process, but it's important to remember at the end of the day, the bottom line is it's information gathering for NFL teams.
Field Yates is with us, NFL reporter for ESPN. Field, the quarterbacks are always the most glorious names at the NFL draft for the most part. I mean, yeah, there are other high-profile players, Ezekiel Elliott at the running back spot, but we don't see running backs taken. Did last year change that with Gurley? Do you think we see Ezekiel Elliott get picked in a top 10 situation because of that, or do you think teams will, again, shy away from the running back spot?
It's a really interesting situation, and Todd Gurley in some ways presented both sides of the equation. You can use a first-round pick on a running back, and it can be worth it, like Todd Gurley, or you can just shy away from running back until the late rounds of the draft or not at all, and you can find Thomas Rawls, like the Seattle Seahawks, who became basically Marshawn Lynch 2.0 in terms of running style and production. I am of the mind that a running back is not my top priority in the first round. And if you look at the teams that have been linked to Ezekiel Elliott in the mock draft season, whether it is the Cowboys at 4, Ravens at 6, Eagles at 8, Dolphins at 13, I suppose outside of Miami, you might not say that those teams' absolute clear-cut top need is a running back. Could you justify the pick with Zeke Elliott in the first round? Yes, because he could very well be a terrific player. The problem isn't so much is he a terrific player, it's could you find somebody much later on in the draft who can provide comparable value and use that 4th, 6th, 8th, or 13th overall pick on a position that is more difficult to find high-level players at.
Field Yates with us talking a little NFL draft, which, of course, we're about 2.5 weeks away from here. Hopefully we can have patience to make it that far. It seems like a longer draft process this year. Maybe, Field, because there isn't a clear-cut number one guy. Do you have a guy or are there a couple of guys at the top of that draft? I think even the number one team doesn't know what they want to do. They'd like to possibly get out of there. So is there a number one overall player for you?
For me, it's Laramie Tunsil, the offensive tackle out of Ole Miss. And, there's a term in scouting, a check-the-box prospect, right? And essentially you have the various boxes at each position. Does a player check any, all, most of them, whatever it may be? You're looking for a left tackle, and you start to go down the prototypical traits. Laramie Tunsil offers just about all of them. I mean, right now the biggest knock against Laramie Tunsil has been that he has not run a 40-yard dash in the pre-draft process. If that's the biggest knock against the guy, that's something that I could live with if I'm the number one overall pick or the team making the number one overall pick. But he has very good length, 34.25-inch arms, 10-inch hands. He's big. He's athletic. He's played at a high level in college. He's not simply a left tackle that's played in the spread and has only played in a two-point stance throughout his career. He's got some pop and power to his game. Laramie Tunsil is a number one overall pick in terms of value and worth. And I think that if the Tennessee Titans stand pat at pick 1, he certainly presents value given the need they have to continue to fortify the offensive line around Marcus Mariota.
Field, how have the Eagles rebounded from the Chip Kelly era? I was going to say disaster, but I don't want to say a guy who won 20 games in 2 seasons, 29 games in 3 years was an absolute disaster in terms of on the field. But I guess inside that front office there was somewhat of a tornado that blew through there. How have they rebounded in the short couple of months post-Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think there's really an answer as of yet. They haven't played a game, haven't had practice. I guess they've started off-season workouts, but that's about it, So hard to say that this team is markedly better or worse than when Chip Kelly was relieved of his coaching duties. The proof in the pudding come games in September, October, November, December. But I would say this, there were some moves that I liked from Philadelphia this offseason. When you examine how the free agency market played out, you certainly like some of the deals they were able to do with guys like Zach Ertz and Lane Johnson and even Vinny Curry, a number that some people thought was a big number at the time in terms of his contract. 5 years, I think it was close to $42 million. Well, then you look at him in the possibility of being on the open market, you probably would have seen that kind of coin. So I like some of those things that Philadelphia did. But I think, and maybe the Eagles' multiple quarterback approach confirms as much, that quarterback is still a question I'm looking for a firm answer to. And DeMarco Murray is gone, so obviously running back is another position to keep on the radar. And then defensively, I think the team just has to be better. That's not some sort of groundbreaking news right there, but they've got to be better. The secondary certainly has to be better in a tough NFC East in terms of capable quarterbacks around them.
Field Yates is with us, ESPN NFL reporter. And Field, I guess one of the big stories that will lead into the draft between now and possibly draft day is the future of Colin Kaepernick. Do you think that will resurface and that he will be moved by Chip Kelly? The narrative was here in Philly when Chip was here right up to that trade deadline last year that he would love to get his hands. Many people thought that he was going to, in fact, trade for Colin Kaepernick. Now, the narrative that they would have split from each other. Do you anticipate Kaepernick staying, or will we see a reborn Kaepernick when he's paired with Chip Kelly?
Yeah, I think the answer might be not. I mean, I could see Kaepernick staying. I could, especially because right now, what it's going to take to move him to the most notable suitor, the Denver Broncos, is Colin Kaepernick agreeing to take a pay cut of what amounts to $5 million to a $7 million paycheck as opposed to $11.9 million. And I have a hard time seeing Colin Kaepernick agreeing to that. I think we all do, for obvious reasons. At the same time, if he stays in San Francisco, it's no sure thing that he's the starter or even necessarily the backup. I mean, if they use the number 7 overall pick or trade up to grab a quarterback, that player would certainly profile as higher up on the depth chart than Colin Kaepernick, and he was benched in favor of Blaine Gabbert last season, I should say. So Kaepernick is an interesting domino. At the same time, the value of Colin Kaepernick can be difficult to size up. A couple months ago, or maybe even a handful of months ago, when he was being benched for Blaine Gabbert, everybody said, well, he may never start in the NFL again. Then he became the hottest quarterback name on the trade market. Now I think it's kind of leveled back off. We will see as to whether or not Colin Kaepernick is even a starter again in 2016.
All right, NFL Draft is on the way. Field Yates and the guys will have plenty more over at ESPN. NFL reporter Field Yates for ESPN here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, 17 days away from the first pick in the NFL Draft. I guess on the way out, Field, will the Titans make that pick?
I think they do, and they've done a nice job of sort of keeping themselves open for business. At the same time, it's going to have to be a blow-you-away offer. I just don't know there's a blow-you-away quarterback prospect, which is normally where teams tend to trade up for when there's a quarterback. We saw it last in 2012 with Washington move up to land Robert Griffin III. I just don't see that sort of scenario unfolding this year because really isn't a quarterback who is clear-cut the clear-cut franchise changer.
All right, Field Yates, everybody. Good NFL conversation at Field Yates on Twitter as we get close to the NFL Draft here on a Monday. The feeling of football is in the air. Thanks, Field.
Thank you.